origin of the universe is a topic that has been continuously debated on by the brilliant minds in the world of science. Since the early part of the 90s, one explanation of the origin and fate of the universe, the Big Bang theory, has dominated the discussion. However, this theory has its weakness according to those who believe in creationism. Creationism is a doctrine or theory that the universe were created by God out of nothing and usually in the way described in Genesis. Many religious persons, including many scientists, hold that God created the universe and the various processes in driving physical and biological evolution, and that this process then resulted in the creation of galaxies, our solar system, and life on Earth. Many religions and beliefs in the world, including Catholicism, Islam, Buddhism, believes in creation. Non-scientific thoughts about the origin of the universe includes religions and myth. Non-scientific means that it does not relate to science or does not involve scientific methods but based on faith, belief, and traditions. Let's get deeper more on it. Here are some non-scientific beliefs about the origin of the universe from different religions, myths, and philosophical beliefs. Come on, and let's learn their different perspectives about the origin of the universe.
The narrative from Genesis, one of the books of the Hebrew Bible and the Christian Old Testament, describe how God separated light from darkness, created the sky, land, sea, moon, stars, and every living creature in a span of 6 days. The first day, light was created. The second day, the sky was created. The third day, dry land, seas, plants, and trees were created. The fourth day, the sun, moon, and stars were created. The fifth day, creatures that live in the sea and creatures that fly were created. The sixth day, animals that live on the land, and finally humans, made in the image of God, were created. By day 7, God finished his work of creation and rested, making the seventh day a special holy day.
Before time began, there was no heaven, no earth, no space, just nothing. The waves of vast dark ocean lapped on the edges of this nothingness, and a giant cobra floated in the waters. Lying asleep in the snake's coils was Lord Vishnu, and the snake kept him safe and he slept really peacefully. Slowly, a sound started. Om. It grew louder and filled the emptiness. It throbbed with energy and drove the nothingness away. Lord Vishnu woke up, and a magnificent lotus flower grew from his navel. Right in the middle of the flower sat Brahma. Lord Vishnu told Brahma to set to work and create a world. And still, sitting in the flower, Brahma calmed the wind, stilled the waves, and brought peace. Brahma split the lotus flower, making 3 different parts: the heavens, the earth, and the skies. To start with, the earth was bare, so Brahma created everything: the grass and all kinds of flowers, trees and plants. He gave these the ability to feel. He let living things evolve, so that the earth became full of animals, insects, birds and fish. He gave these the ability to touch and smell, as well as the ability to see, hear and move. Soon the world was alive with life, and the air was filled with the sounds of Brahma's creations. So, Hindus have many ways of thinking about God. As part of this, they say there is one God, but use different names for God when he does different things. When God creates, he is called Brahma, and when God looks after the creation, he is called Vishnu. But God has a third name. At some time, God will decide to bring this universe to an end, and as Lord Shiva, he will destroy the universe.
Universe is often defined as totality of existence, which means everything is all that exists, the opposite of nothing or its complement. The concept of nothingness itself and the assumption that nothingness is possible is a philosophical concept and a philosophical assumption which goes much beyond. In effort to make sense of the universe, humans use religion, traditions, philosophy, and science to describe the origin and structure. There are stories and beliefs passed on from one generation to another. Like different philosophers have their different beliefs and theories about the origin of the universe, some are related to science, some are not. According to Greek creation myth, there was nothing but chaos, a yawning nothingness. It is believed that chaos was something of a careless god who lived in a dark, chaotic void with no order at all. There was no sun, moon, solid land, water, or anything else while chaos reigned in charge. Out of the void emerged Gaia and other gods. Without male assistance, Gaia gave birth to two other gods named Phontus and Uranus. Several events between the Greek gods happened later, like the betrayal of Cronus to his father Uranus and Zeus being the king, and the rest of the beings are formed.
For ancient Egyptians, the time before time, our primordial beginnings, start in a great sea of chaos, which they called the Nu. This sea of chaos was a formless void of unutilized inertia with unlimited potentiality. Within this sea was Nebertcher, which means the limitless one. Nebertcher became aware and desired to create the world and experience it. He spoke his name, Atum, and created his form out of the chaos. Atum rose out of the sea, the Nu, and realized he was alone. There was no land to stand upon, or others to experience. Atum spoke another word, the name of the firmament, and the waters of the Nu receded, revealing a great mound for him to stand upon. Atum dreamed of his children, then spoke their names, Shu and Tefnut, creating them into existence. Shu was the dryness of air, and Tefnut was moisture. Shu and Tefnut desired to explore the expanse of the Nu, and so they left Atum to wander. Much time had passed, and Atum greatly missed his children and worried over them. He sent his eye to search for them in the chaos. The eye eventually found Shu and Tefnut and brought them back to their father. Atum was overjoyed and wept at the sight of his children's return. From his tears were born people and all the creatures of the world. While the eye was gone, searching for Shu and Tefnut, another eye had grown in its place. When it returned, it became distraught that it had been replaced, but Atum loved his eye and placed it in his forehead to watch over the world, and it became the sun, the god Ra. The other eye became the moon. Shu and Tefnut had two children, Geb the earth, and Nut the sky. Geb and Nut were in a constant embrace, and so their father, Shu, the air, would separate them during the day so that people and the animals could live there. Next, Geb and Nut had 4 children: Osiris, Isis, Seth, and Nephthys. These were the gods who would live among men on earth, with Ra ruling over them all. He was the first pharaoh. The god's role was to maintain Ma'at, or order and justice, in the face of chaos, represented by the great serpent Apep, also known as Apophis by the Greeks. Apep was the chaos that was left behind when Atum rose from the new in primordial time. Ra would travel across the sky every day in his golden boat until he reached the underworld, where he would do battle with Apep. This was the constant struggle in the Egyptian mythology, to keep order and prevent chaos from reclaiming the world and returning everything to the waters of the new, including the gods and Atum Ra itself.
Ginnungagap was the great emptiness before there was a world or any living things in it. Far to the south of the Ginnungagap was the fiery realm of Muspel, with its long hot rivers full of poison and vast lakes of fire. Nothing could grow in this burning realm. To the north was the dark and cold realm of Niflheim, where icy fountains spewed forth freezing rivers. Nothing could grow here either, for the sky was always dark and the mountains were blocks of solid ice. Slowly, over years and years and years, the fiery blasts from Muspel began to melt the icy mountains of Niflheim. Out of the melting ice, the giant Ymir emerged, the first being of the vast Ginnungagap. Next to him, there emerged a cow from the ice. The cow licked the salt from the ice mountains, and Ymir drank the cow's milk. Ymir grew larger and larger. The cow licked away entire mountains of ice. Slowly she licked the ice from 2 more beings, this time the god Birdi and his goddess wife. They had a son named Bor, and his son was named Odin, who became king of all the gods. Ymir was cruel and brutal. Odin and the other gods could no longer abide by his evil acts, and together the gods slew him. Ymir's huge body formed the earth, his blood became the sea, his flesh became the land, his bones the mountains, and his hair the trees. Odin and the other gods formed the sky with his skull, held up by 4 towering pillars. Odin gathered sparks from the fiery depths of Muspel and created the sun and moon. These he set in the sky. As the sun and moon shone over the new world in the Ginnungagap, the ice began to melt and plants and trees began to grow. The greatest tree of all was the Yggdrasil, which grew in the very center of the earth. Its roots penetrated into the bottom of creation, and its leaves reached the very top of the sky. Odin was satisfied with the new world and named it Midgard, the Middle Land. But the world still needed people. On one of his walks, Odin found 2 fallen trees, an ash and an elm. He lifted them from the mud and formed the first man and woman from them. Odin breathed life into these beings, gave them reason and feelings, hearing and sight. He named the man Ask and the woman Embla. From these 2 sprang the entire human race. The humans had the task of looking after Midgard, while the gods ascended to Asgard, their realm in heaven. However, not everyone was pleased with Odin's work. Ymir's giant sisters were still mourning his death, and were looking for a way to take their revenge on the gods who killed him. They gathered at the foot of Yggdrasil and began carving lines into it. Each line was a human life, filled with twists and turns, beginning with a man's birth and ending with his death. At the end of each line they made a deep cut to ensure that humans would never be as powerful as the gods. These spells were so powerful that not even Odin could do anything to change them. Thus, Yggdrasil became known as the Tree of Life, and humans knew death and suffering in their world.
In the beginning, there was no time, no gods, and no people, only the land and the sea. Where these two primordial elements met, a white mare made of sea foam was born. Her name was Iocha, and she was the goddess of the ocean. On the land grew a huge oak which bore seeds known as the tears of the sea. To sustain herself, Iocha ate these white berries which transformed into a child within her. In due time, she gave birth to the god Cernunnos. The pain of birth was unbearable, and in her agony, Iocha ripped a piece of bark from the tree and hurled it into the sea. The bark sank into the watery depths of the abyss, and from its husk rose the giants of the sea. Iocha spent a lot of time in the ocean, causing Cernunnos to feel isolated. He felt outnumbered by the sea giants who roamed the abyss, causing floods and earthquakes. In his loneliness, he asked Iocha to bear him children. She agreed, and through their union they sired Maponos, god of youth, Cernunnos, god of thunder, Tetuates, the divine protector, and finally Epona, a fertility goddess. For many years they lived happily together, but as time passed, Iocha's children became adults, and she started to feel restless. She longed for the waters of home, so she left Cernunnos to return to the ocean as a sea mare. She became known as Tethra, goddess of the deep. With Iocha gone, the gods became bored and lonely, for they no longer had someone to command them. They desired company, so they decided to create a new race of beings to honor and worship them. They took bark from the great oak tree and fashioned the first man and the first woman. Cernunnos then made animals from the bark: a deer, a hound, a raven, a hare, and a snake. From that moment on, he became known as the god of beasts, and he ordered the oak to grow into a vast and beautiful forest for his children and animals to live in. It was a green and luscious paradise, shining like an emerald in the darkness.
Strength and weakness of non-scientific thoughts. Let's start with strength. First and foremost is their creativity. It is not easy to think of different stories of human origin that bind different elements of the environment. Second, these theories or beliefs may reflect a religion's culture. It can directly influence how the people view the universe. If there's a strength, there's a weakness. Come on, and let's find the weaknesses of non-scientific beliefs. The weakness of religions and myths. Even though there is much to prove and show about the ancient people, there is no physical proof that these things or events have actually happened. Disregarding scientific findings and instead believing unsupported ideas may lead to misinformation and delusions.
Non-scientific thoughts are more about supernatural events. Most of these beliefs came from different religions, myths, and philosophy. Some of these theories or thoughts are about gods and goddesses who first existed in the world and are said to be the one who is responsible for the creation of all beings. We all have different perspectives about the origin of the universe, and those perspectives have their own weaknesses and strengths. But despite the differences in our beliefs, we should learn to respect each other's point of view.